My name is Patricia Kathleen, and this podcast series will contain interviews I conduct with women, female identified, and non binary individuals regarding their professional stories and personal narrative as it relates to their perspective. This podcast is designed to hold a space for all individuals to learn from their counterparts, regardless of age, status, or industry. We intend to transparently investigate the evolving global dialogue regarding underrepresented figures in all industries across the USA and abroad. By hosting these stories and conversations, we aim to contribute to the changing platform and representation of these individuals for the future. Now let's start the conversation. Hi, everyone. This is your host, Patricia, and today I am sitting down with Kate Gardiner. She's the founder and CEO of Grey Horse. Grey Horse is a boutique agency building holistic communications for media brands globally. Welcome, Kate.
Hey, nice to see you, Patricia. How are you today?
Good. Very well, as good as can be expected. I'm so glad that you took the time to sit down with us in these kind of very ambiguous times and talk with us about Grey Horse. I know a lot of audience members are really going to appreciate it. So I want to say thank you up front for meeting with me.
Oh, of course, of course.
Cool. For everyone listening, I'm going to read a bio on Kate, but before I get to that, a quick roadmap of today's podcast. It's going to follow the trajectory that all of the podcasts in this series follow. Namely, we'll look at Kate's academic background and early professional life prior to founding Grey Horse, and then we'll unpack Grey Horse. First, we'll look at the nuts and bolts of the who, what, when, where, why, how, funding, all of that good stuff on the back end. Then we'll look forward to the ethos and the growth and things that Grey Horse has done since the launch. And then we'll turn our focus towards goals that Kate may have for the next 3 years regarding scaling, branding, any other kinds of expansion, which given the current climate of the economy is really interesting to see how that changes for everyone on a daily basis. And we'll wrap everything up with advice that Kate may have for those of you who are looking to get involved with Grey Horse and some of its services, or perhaps mirror Kate's success. A quick bio on Kate before I start asking her some questions. Kate Gardiner is the founder of Grey Horse, a boutique agency building holistic communications for media brands globally. She is also known in the worlds of media technology and broadcast for her understanding of journalism, audience engagement, and social media. Gardiner began as a traditional journalist, eventually focusing on social media and running her own shop. Her work has reached millions across platforms, from her work with PBS NewsHour, Newsweek, where she was the director of audience engagement, New York Public Radio, and Al Jazeera in Doha. Gardiner has managed dozens of projects, driving long-tail distribution through social media, partnerships, public relations, and new platform adoption. Both Gardiner and her clients have won awards with the Online News Association and the Emmys. She is a member of the 2016 class of Forbes 30 Under 30, among other awards. Gardiner speaks frequently about the role of women in the workplace, audience engagement strategies for small and mid-sized companies, and building community for specific niche audiences. She also hosts events and programming around health, mentorship, and entrepreneurship. She resides in New York City, and you can learn more at www.greyhorse.cc and kategardiner.com. That's KATEGARDINER.com. So, Kate, I'm really excited to get into Grey Horse and what you do there. We spoke a little bit off the record regarding how I appreciate even the web design and things of that nature. But before we get to that, I'm hoping that you can give us a brief understanding or a glimpse at your academic background and early professional life prior to developing Grey Horse.
Sure. So I was a journalist for about 6 years. I started out as an undergraduate at Brandeis University in, just outside Boston in Waltham. And then I was a journalist in Hawaii. We went bankrupt. I ended up at Medill, the journalism school at Northwestern. And I graduated from both that program and from a media-specific program at Kellogg. After that, I ended up bouncing through all sorts of traditional media organizations, as you said, including WBEZ in Chicago, the radio station, PBS NewsHour, then Al Jazeera, then all over New York, including my last position at Newsweek. And then from there, I started this company, which is coming up on about 5 years.
Okay, so you guys launched in about 2015, 2016?
Yeah, it was the very end of 2015, and we actually had a different name at that point, but same difference. And we've had the privilege of having a lot of awesome clients over the years. So
absolutely. 5 years is a good amount. I like a 5-year in company with most people because you've got some of your growing pains behind you, but you're still kind of in the thick of it. You know, things are still changing daily. Were you the original founder? Did you have co-founders? And did you take any funding?
Yeah. We've never taken funding. We are a good old-fashioned cash business. And I did have co-founders at the beginning in 2015, 2016. They left me in 2017. And but we kept most of the staff, and it's gone on ever since. So this year we've got about 10 employees all over the country because we were fully remote. And we've had all sorts of crazy adventures that I'm happy to talk about.
Absolutely. So when you originally structured it, if you had co-founders and then you switched out to them kind of dissolving, did the structure of the company change at that point? And is that when you took on the title Grey Horse?
Yeah, we actually dissolved the original corporate entity, and I transferred the staff over to another company that I had. It was briefly called Distill, and that was actually a company that my dad had given to me for my 16th birthday because he's an attorney and it amused him.
Yeah, excellent.
And then through a series of changes, we ended up with Grey Horse, which is actually named after my horse Copenhagen, who is a gray horse.
Nice. Why not? That's fantastic. So since you've been the sole, let's say, founder and chief executive officer, how has has there been change in the industries that you serve or the way that it's structured? Have things moved or have they kind of stayed the same since its original build?
We are not at all the same company that we started as. So I have done everything from consulting work with major media companies through traditional public relations to building conferences and events to handling a lot of large-scale crisis communications situations. And we've had the privilege of working with some of the best people in the industry across the board. And it's a referrals-based business, so it's also kind of we eat what we catch, which has been wild, but we've been extraordinarily fortunate, and I've enjoyed many of the projects that we've managed to put out in the world.
Yeah, it's interesting when you get on your site. What I love about it's kind of apparent even before knowing your background that you have this incredible history with like transparency and like succinct information. Like I think one of the first things that really caught my eye, even on your website, was you list off these areas that you and your company work in and specialize in, and then you say that's a lot. So let's get into examples of what we're talking about. It's all very like it's transparent and straightforward on your site. And I'm wondering how many of those particular areas that you assist people in developed along the way, or how crystallized was the idea of what you were going to provide your clients, or did it kind of come about as your clients needed things?
It's completely that last point. So our structure is entirely organic. It used to be that I was basically a freelancer with an assistant, and then it turned out that we could start to hire people. We just had so much work coming in, and so we kept growing and adding things, and then it became sort of a question that was more people coming to me and saying, "Hey, Kate, I want to work with you. What do you do?" And I used to say, "Well, what do you need?" And now it helps folks to have a list, and that's kind of where all of this stuff comes from. But we've been very, very, very everything that comes in my door, I say yes to, and then sometimes we figure it out by the skin of our teeth. But it's been wild, and sometimes the one thing that I always do is answer just about every email. And that's really the key to our success. It's quite frankly been wildly responsive. and being extraordinarily bespoke. So we have had all sorts of different people from all sorts of walks of life come in, and our there's a motto on the wall of my dad's office that says "No job too big or small," and that's sort of what we've lived up to as well.
That's awesome, because I think that there's kind of there's a flip side to that I've been hearing a lot with entrepreneurs. And it's really across the different, it's not millennial entrepreneurs or some of the boomers, anyone in between, Gen X. But a lot of people get into like this whole like niche, like only service one small community, only do this. And I think that while there is merit to that, because it helps really crystallize people's goals and what they're doing and their own purpose and their value-driven aspects, it closes the door on a lot of what you're describing, of this openness of people who can work across different populations and industries and kind of fine tune their skills as they go. I personally came up with like a generation where you wanted someone who knew a little bit about the other industries. It was that cross pollination that was developing the .com industry that would blow people out of the water and things like that. You wanted this like hybrid person that could do a couple of different things. So it's cool to see that kind of represented in what you're doing. I know that if when people visit your website, you have an emphasis, you have a focalized point towards women or female identified individuals and people like that. Can you kind of speak towards the ethos of your company in those areas?
Sure. We prefer to support businesses that we can believe in, right? So that's like the base point of this. But the secondary element is that I didn't know that I was a girl in the sense of business girl type stuff until I was probably 25. And it became very apparent that that was going to be an issue with particular people that I was working with. And over time from there, we really started to dedicate a lot of our work to the women's movement. I used to run a very influential network of women who were really committed to changing the future of and the way that women were received in the workplace. And that started to influence my work. And then the people who've been attracted to working with me and who've been the most dedicated have really been from the women's movement, from the feminist movement. With that said, we do take male clients. Sometimes very cynically, what I'll say is we to have to take male clients. And the reason we have to is because women don't have the money yet. And I talk about that a lot because to me, like, isolating ourselves from the money doesn't actually help us with our overall mission of empowering more women. And so we're by no means exclusive. And we go out of our way to ensure that we service anyone and anybody whose values or corporate values or otherwise kind of are in keeping with what we hope our goals are going to be for the next several years.
Absolutely. Do you have do you affiliate yourself with anyone, or have you ever in the past, not even just with sponsorship probably isn't an idea, but like affiliations? I always wonder if people like Now or NARAL or people ever tried to affiliate with companies such as yours. I've spoken to a lot of people who've developed companies. Gender Fair, I was just talking to someone earlier today.
Oh, Amy, yeah, I know her.
Yeah, and then exactly, and then 81 cents or 83 cents, I can't remember, but all of these different companies that are kind of starting up. And I had asked them, do you guys affiliate with anyone? And everyone's answer was no, but we'd love to. And so I was wondering if you had ever affiliated yourself with someone, or if you would consider that, or if you want to keep Gray Horse kind of more like insulated from those kinds of affiliations.
We are not formal partners with anyone, but you'll find us behind the scenes with a lot of those organizations. And it's not that we don't want to be public partners with them. It's honestly that organizations like NARAL need all the money to go directly to them, right? And so for me, the business sense is I will give you a certain amount of my time, or I'll program something for you, or I'll do a fundraiser or something like that. And we definitely do that. Amy's over at Gender Fair, she's doing a really important thing for corporations, and we do love working with her when it makes sense. It's a heavy upsell right now to have social impact and CSR type programs, even when they are beneficial, like the Gender Fair certification. In part because the economy has shifted so dramatically in the past month that really no one has any idea what they should be spending money on, but everybody's trying to save for a rainy day because we're all sensing that a rainy day is coming. And actually, to your earlier point about sort of the flexibility, the reason that Grey Horse and my team are tasked with anything, anytime, is quite frankly because during the 2008-2009 recession, when media first started to die from its current form, you had to be able to do anything. You had to develop expertise doing whatever it was that you could possibly think of.
Yeah.
And the reason for that was just basically because you quite literally had no predictable income if you were a media person. Some of us, I know a woman who's recently been laid off for the 5th or 6th time in the past 3 years. I know that another woman who, has just frankly given up on having jobs and started her own thing. I know many, many, many people who've had to leave the industry. And if that's what's happened to you, that flexibility is the thing that's going to save you and keep income coming in from somewhere. Be it, everything from wedding photography to writing obituaries. There's
Absolutely.
It's that level of creativity that's required. We've worked with Planned Parenthood in the sense that on occasion we assist them in some endeavors. And then we've also worked across a lot of the environmental networks. So we've worked with a lot of ocean-specific conservation groups. And what I have to say about all of that is that the challenge really is once you affiliate with yourself with one of those groups, you're kind of stuck with them, and that can be good. But if it is perceived as the wrong one by the wrong person, then you can never work with that other team. And it's one of the failings of sort of nonprofit and activism. There's always these petty wars that distract from whatever the greater good might have been.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's hard to get caught up.
I know, and there is that pressure. I do understand that. I think even with sponsorships, which happen a lot in podcasts and things that I do, there's a temptation to get things funded, but also a leeriness of having it somehow exclude you. The whole adage, tell me who you run with and I'll tell you who you are. None of us want to be boxed in. But again, it's also like, unless you unite, you die, and so there's also that. It is interesting though, that a lot of people work in communion with each other, but don't necessarily have the same, I guess, old school affiliations. Perhaps I'm even dating myself suggesting that people be affiliated anymore. Not certain. I wonder, with looking into what you're doing now, and you've touched a little bit on it, and I don't suppose you have, a doctoral thesis around thought based on it, but from what you can tell in your industry, and because you did reflect back on, kind of the metamorphosis, the news or the dying off happened in the 2008 and what media was and would become. Looking at your industry now and looking at the COVID-19 pandemic that's happening, do you have any particular, have you surmised an idea of things that you'll need to integrate into your company in order to guarantee that you stay afloat?
We are unique in a lot of ways. And so I, at the moment, feel cautiously optimistic about our future, which I know is unusual in our part of the industry, but I don't know how long that's going to last. And I also, last time everything was so unpredictable that anything that I had said the first day of the problem was not what I was saying the last day.
Right.
But at the moment, my major concern is that we have 3.5 million plus people who are unemployed in the first month of the disaster, and that's the United States. And the money that those people pay trickles up and is conglomerated by some of the companies, and then the companies are the people who eventually pay us, right? And
Mhm.
my concern is 3 to 6 months down the road when some of that conglomeration is just no longer happening, and someone's budget runs out, or someone's project dies, or something along those lines.
Mhm.
But that said, I like to think that our product offerings are so diverse that if there is money on the table, we'll at least have a really good shot of winning it through proposal phases or things like that. My girls are wildly creative, very, very ambitious, and they work very, very, very hard.
Yeah.
And I'm very, I do believe in my team at this point. My focus is on getting resources to them so that they can do the work that they love, and so that we can try to survive this particular version of the apocalypse. Because it's odd to think of it that way, but this is literally a version of a very slow moving tidal wave, or the locusts, or quite
Mhm.
literally a plague, right? So it's also just a kind of a wait and see. uh, I know that uh, lots and lots of us are just frantically filling in the SBA forms and all of the other forms from the government, knowing that we might not need the resources, but it is better to be in the line and say no than it is to not have been in the line at all. So
Yeah. Right.
that's kind of how I'm thinking about it. I think the one benefit of this situation is that it is going to kill a lot of sort of mediocre companies in media, and
Mhm.
either free up that capital for new companies to be formed that might have better ideas,
Mhm.
or uh, it will unfortunately enhance the power of the largest companies in our spaces. Um, Either way, I think that there it, it has gotten a bit ridiculous from the venture capital side of things,
Mm.
and some money was just being ill spent. I'm hopeful that some of this will teach people to spend money better, but
Yeah.
at the same time, I am on the side of the Governor Cuomo when he says, there's no dollar value on a human life,
Mhm.
and I would rather that we use our economic prowess to facilitate both a cure for the disease and then a cure for whatever happens to the economy in these coming months. Um,
Yeah.
and I'm hopeful that New York gets to lead the way. It is very, very hard to watch what is happening to everything from hospitality and hotels to construction, to any sort of physical endeavor that requires two people to interact. Uh,
Mhm.
as a person whose job is to literally meet people on a daily basis, the isolation is wild. And we work with a mental health practice, and they are having, for better or worse, an extraordinary increase in the number of clients served,
Mhm. Yeah.
because of how many bad things are happening right now.
Absolutely. My sister is a therapist, and
Hmm.
and she's doubled her workload, not even out of desire, but out of the duty she feels and her colleagues feel to kind of meet that calling of people who are terrified, and people who need to
Hmm.
speak and do things of that nature. I know there's been a lot. I hope, given to your earlier suspicions, that, well, I always hope that the larger amassed corporations do not become more wealthy, because it's boring. At its very worst, it's boring, and outside of that, it's ridiculously overly capitalistic. But I also hope what you said is true. I've heard it a few times this week. I don't know of the auspiciousness of it, or perhaps I'm just the last one to realize it. But there's been a lot of speculation that this mediocrity that seemed to be kind
Hmm.
of flooding a lot of areas of the market where talent was concerned, where services were concerned, and this kind of paying a pretty decent sum for semi okay services, and that actually drowning out people that had like greater talent and greater creativity and things of that nature. And that's exciting to me. I always like to look at things realistically, but then also not forget the fact that, we still, there's still beauty and empathy and hope in the world. And so maybe that's the point of hope for this particular conversation that I'll take away and focus on. I'm wondering, and given that I'm looking forward with this hope and things like that, and not barring or including or excluding the COVID-19 situation, do you, as a business, do you put yourself on the traditional 1 to 3 year timeline for goals and future planning? And if you do, what do those look like for you?
We have a vague notion. I think our this year we do a state of the horse, right? So the state of the horse is a report that I do in this fall. I did one finally this fall. It was late, but it got there just before the deadline of December. And then we do one somewhere over summer that's like June-ish. And it's honestly, it's just an understanding of clients that we want, places we want to go, products we want to launch, and then clients we either want to retain or that we want to target, right? So that part, yeah, we have some knowledge of where we're going, but a lot of what we do is pretty responsive. This afternoon, actually, we did our first fireside chat with a woman called Tiffany Shalane. I suspect that we're going to do a lot more since I have like 150 people that I've come up with for guests so far today. But that is actually just directly related to the COVID epidemic. Everyone is sitting at home, and we're fortunate enough to know a ton of people. And I'm like, I am going to give all these people a platform, because why the hell not, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
We're playing with that. And I always wanted to run a media company. So if I'm lucky, in addition to the services that we already offer, we're going to be able to own our own channels and really get out there. But at the same time, this is a really weird time to be building a media company. So, or to be building anything new. I think a lot of us, our instinct is to cling. And whether or not that clinging happens and continues, or if it stops, we'll see. But I'm really hopeful that my girls and my team is all women except for the intern and one designer. But I'm hopeful that our team manages to live through this and ride the waves, and that we keep producing sort of best of class work for everything. We've finally decided this year that we'll probably maybe fill in the awards forms. That seems like fun.
Yeah, some paperwork,
stuff like that.
File some back taxes.
Oh, yeah, that. And then the other thing that we finally did is we finally got our women-owned business certification, which we've completely ignored thus far, because I always thought it was sort of obvious, but the city and state of New York don't see it as obviously as I do. So, it's tasks like that we're definitely chasing. And then we're just trying to decide. I'm trying to decide what my path forward is. We have some in-house talent that have consistently been promoted, and they're young, but they're feisty. So it's been fun to facilitate them maturing, and I'm hopeful that they'll stick around for a couple more years at least. And then I'm personally, I don't know. It's weird to feel so disconnected from New York City, but as I spend more and more time out in the country where I'm from, it's interesting to learn more about whether or not I can call myself on my own bluff and say, hey, we're a fully remote company that literally is fully remote. We don't have a home base in the same way that we might have otherwise expected.
Yeah.
And we were, for better or worse, as a company that's been fully remote for 7 or 8 years, we've known how cool it was the whole time. What I'm curious about is how many of these folks in the next 8 months, 12 months, whatever, how many people actually go back to wherever it was that they had their office, and how much of the upper middle class white collar people stay wherever they retreated to. I have friends across the country who are suddenly freed from their desks and their cubicles and stuff, and none of them really minds, or some of them
Mm-hmm.
don't want to go back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, from my perspective, you're going to have to fight more and more for real world interaction,
Right.
um, as this drags on. And I think the only cost that we have is some of that serendipity. And so, how we figure out the equivalent of digital serendipity in a way that's fun and exciting, um, that's really, what I'm looking forward to. Like, what is this new world where how do we meet people we don't already know or already have a connection to?
Right.
And
We need the artists to hook up with the computer programmers. We need some new ideas. I've heard about, I stay abreast because of who I'm married to, of every new
mhm.
little beta piece of software on the market, and nothing has kind of blown anything out of the water. And I think it's because somewhere along the line, um, software development and even social media became rote. You could kind of explain. I mean, Snapchat came along, I was like, yeah, I could have predicted that. I mean, it was just, there's nothing new being done. And so I'm hoping that with this, the artistic measures that come into good programming start to play and really work for us. And people like prodigies are born in times of strife and times of feast. And I think that, launching a media company in the middle of this kind of confusing time period could make it just a thing of unique beauty. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that and with your plans moving forward.
Yeah, we actually have an event of some kind. We haven't decided what its delivery mechanism will be at the moment, because we'd reserved space and now we're kind of figuring that out. But
Mm-hmm.
that we're doing with a partner organization this fall, and one of the areas is sort of the artist's vision of the future. So it's,
Yeah.
what cool stuff can the artists come up with that might actually be able to be realized, and then
Mm-hmm.
how do we get somewhere from there. And it's been a really interesting series of conversations for programming reasons, because it depends.
Yeah.
If you're talking about a person who lives in a city, their perception of what the future needs to hold is so wildly different from what someone in the country wants. And then the suburban people, it's just a completely different world as well.
There's different needs and different desires, but then there's also unifying factors that everyone
Mhm.
overlooks. Like, everyone wanted to get on Facebook, be it someone in Kansas and, the fields, to, someone in downtown Madrid. I mean, so there are elements that connected us all at some point, these drives. And then I think you're right. I think there is diversification as to what people really need from their interactions and from the tools that we use and the art that we have that represents those tools and pushes them forward. I agree. I'm wondering if you bumped into someone, you're out in the country now, so we can go back to when you were in New York or in the country, and
Mhm.
this particular analogy doesn't really work because of COVID, but let's pretend that
Mhm.
you could have bumped into somebody, or you bump in virtually from 6 feet away, and they say, listen, I was referred to you, Kate. I know what you've done with your life, and I've kind of got a similar thing going on, and I'm getting ready to launch this company of mine. I'm going out on my own. I'm doing this and this. I've got a few areas that I'm servicing, but what are the top 3 pieces of advice you would give that person, knowing that they were following in a similar path as you, but knowing what you know now?
Don't screw up your money, is the first thing.
Mhm.
We screwed up our money. It is 2020. It took me 2.5 years to fix it. And I literally fixed it the day before the pandemic. So, like, that was kind of great timing, but also, what the hell?
Mhm.
You know, uh, More than half your time you have to spend on pitching new business. I don't care if you're selling shoes or creative services. Uh, you're not you also have to be thinking a sales cycle ahead. So in our case, the sales cycle is 3 to 6 months. For some people it's shorter, for some people it's longer. It takes 2 years to understand the rhythm, and barring pandemics, most of the time things stay the same-ish. For example, I have given up on the month of August because it's stupid and it should be deleted. I've also given up on the month of December, which is also stupid and should be deleted. And if I acknowledge that I don't have any expectations for either of those months, it's fine. If I have expectations, particularly in the context of sales for either of those months, I'm in trouble because it's not going to work. Everyone is at the beach or whatever it is that they do that isn't working. And that took a lot of getting used to. And if you are a solopreneur or you're a small business, it is really all dependent on your shoulders. And it is just going to take a long time to get used to it. And then the third thing is related to those two issues. Once you have your sort of projected deal flow in it, you have to kind of commit to the type of business you want to have. You can either have a solopreneurship or whatever, a small situation where it's like 1 to 3 people, and that's all well and good. That is a situation where if your prices are high enough, you're going to live a very nice life. You have relatively low stress, but the minute that you have issues, you're going to have absolutely no backup. You can try to build a bigger company that can support you if things collapse, but the numbers get a lot bigger and it gets a lot scarier very quickly. You also end up opening yourself up to a lot of risk in ways that you might not have anticipated. And then the last thing is, if and this is like so standard but so stupid, if you don't know how to do something, hire someone who does. And it might seem really expensive, but it is worse to have a mad client than it is to lose $50 or $100 or whatever proportionate amount of bucks. And that was a hard lesson learned on my side, but I cannot stress how important it is, because those first few clients are the clients who are going to make or break you.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the whole, doing it all, too many hats on one head makes for a, sad outfit. And I totally agree. I think that, the angry client thing is just, I don't know what that is. I don't know if it's my overachiever or what, but I agree. An angry client is just, it's worse than a toddler who hasn't slept with, the flu. It's awful. So I've got, don't screw up your money. More than half your time should be spent pitching new business, and know your sales cycle tied into that. And you have to commit to one kind of business. And that means hire the right people for the right task. Those are awesome pieces of advice. There you go. I've just given you your next book proposal. If you didn't have it already, you're welcome. From Patricia to Kate. That's awesome. No, it really is. It's a small book I would read any day of the week, or a thicker one actually. But that's fantastic. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate your time today. We are up and out of time, Kate, but I wanted to say, I know it's late where you're at, and I know that you're busy, and I really appreciate you taking the time and giving myself and our audience all of your candor and wisdom.
Well, thank you so much, Patricia. And let me know if anybody needs to get in touch or wants to talk to me. I'm always online and always on all of the platforms. And I'm always happy to talk.
Fantastic. And you heard it. She returns all of her emails, folks. So reach out. We've been talking with Kate Gardiner. You can find her at www.greyhorse.cc and kategardiner.com. And for everyone listening, thank you for giving us your time tonight. And until we speak again next time, remember to always bet on yourself. Sluncha.